You are listening to WCB Newsline. Unleash.
Welcome, both of you. I'm going to have you introduce yourselves and who you are, and just a little bit about maybe what you've done career-wise, so everybody knows who you are. And then we'll just kind of get into telling more about yourselves and your life. So we'll start with Keiko.
Oh my goodness. Okay, my name is Keiko Namakata, of course. After getting my degree in rehabilitation teaching from Western Michigan University, I first worked for the state of Illinois. They changed the names, but what used to be called Department of Rehabilitation. I was a teacher in the vocational rehabilitation program and worked with a VR counselor, and I visited people in their homes teaching them blindness skills. And then I covered, 4 counties, neighboring Cook County, which has Chicago. Then we moved to Seattle, and I got employment with Department of Services for the Blind as a field RT, rehabilitation teacher. We did some home visits. Those were the days that we used to do home teaching, so-called. There were 2 other staff, and we kind of covered King County, Seattle area. And then there was a big layoff, so I went to work for, I guess they went through several name changes, but at the time it was called Vision Services, and then more popularly known as Community Services for the Blind and Partially Sighted. And then before they closed, they were Sight Connection. I worked for them for a couple of years as an itinerant, and my area primarily was in Seattle, but also covered East Side in Bellevue, Kirkland, and so forth. And I did combination of using a taxi, metro, and towards the end, they did provide driver services that they reimbursed me for. And then opportunity came up with DSB in the Orientation and Training Center, and I went to work for them in the training center as a communication instructor. I taught Braille, typing. Those were the days before the computers, and then we did some Echo and Apple IIe. And then I guess I worked as a VRC for about 1.5 years until there was an opportunity with the Independent Living Program, and I was their service delivery coordinator, I think from, 91 to 94. I got a chance to apply for the Orientation and Training Center program manager. So I got that job in 94, and I retired in 2014. So that's basically my career, and I'm retired. My second career is homemaker, housewife, grandparents, and do a little bit of volunteering.
Okay, and then Naomi, talk about your career a little bit too.
Sure. My name is Naomi Namakata. I am an assistive technology specialist for the Washington Assistive Technology Program, which is based out of the University of Washington. And in this job, I manage the I Can Connect program, which is the National Deaf-Blind Equipment Distribution Program. We partner with Perkins School for the Blind to provide services to all Washington state residents who qualify for this program. And currently, I have about 7 part-time trainers around the state. In this job, I also do a lot of professional trainings. We have a contract with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation to do trainings for them. We also have a project with King County to do some senior trainings in the senior center. So kind of a wide range of trainings and kind of presentations that I do for this position. I've been here since 2017. So that's about 5 years now. Prior to that, I worked for the Department of Services for the Blind in their VR program. Started in 2001 as a counselor aide, which is now a rehab technician. And they supported me, DSB supported me in going back to school to get some computer related classes, coursework and trainings, and became an AT specialist for DSB in the VR program, the Vocational Rehabilitation Program, and did that for many years. I covered almost all parts of Washington state over the years, except for the very eastern part. I did Yakima and Ellensburg even, but not Spokane and Tri-Cities. So it was a great experience, and I gained a lot of skills and just met a lot of really cool people over the years.
And you have children as well?
I do, yes. I have a son. His name is Ren, and he is about to turn 7. His birthday is at the end of the month. So he's in first grade.
That's a lovely age.
Oh, yeah. He's the best.
Okay, so I think my first question, Keiko, what do you feel like is the most important thing that your work in the industry has been, or what you've accomplished that you would say is the one most important thing?
Wow. Let's see. I guess, I spent the most time at DSB in the Orientation Training Center managing the program. So I guess it's the training center started off as kind of, I don't know, a place where people sent their students or clients to acquire skills, but a lot of times, they were really not focused on the next steps. And so I think creating a value or meaning to the training center, and that, I used to feel always like a stepchild, of the Department of Services for the Blind. The most important part was the VR program and employment and so forth. And I firmly believe that alternative skills, good, solid alternative skills, training and acquisition of skills are the most important, critical first step in anyone's success. If you don't have the skills, if you can't survive as an individual, get to places, look good, and perform not only the job tasks, but all of the other skills that, I guess, for lack of other thing, alternative skills to blindness that really makes you a full person and to be able to participate. So I wanted to add that, hone in that kind of a importance or value to the training program and mean something to the administration and also to the counselors, the real valuable resource. So not only training, but assessment of people's skills and how they can potentially succeed and what they could achieve. And I think all of the programs that we've added in the training center had to do with helping those students develop themselves to their full potential, to be able to begin that journey towards, their future employment outcomes. and also communicating with the counselors and really helping them to address their information. So I guess, having made a difference, or I don't know, added value, the OTC program to the VR system, so become more of an integral part rather than a separate entity that counselor use to deal with clients that they didn't know what to do with.
Yeah, it sounds like a very holistic approach, not just this piece or that piece, but definitely the whole person. And I love that concept. On the opposite end of that, being retired now, do you see an area that you still think could be improved upon with the services?
Oh, well, I try to not meddle in the program. So I kind of totally divorced myself from DSB activities, other than just once in a while checking in to see what's going on, and so forth and so on. And I did focus on working with the Site Connection before they closed. And to me, being a retired person, and a lot of people lose vision at a later life. And that like majority of the people, overwhelming number of people lose vision after they reach, 60 or 65.
Sure.
Through variety of, eye diseases and so forth and so on, and other, secondary issues. That population is so underserved, and there's so many more people. Just because you're old doesn't mean that, you deserve a full life. To be able to continue to live your life, as independently as possible, and understanding that, as we get older, things will change. But the beauty of independent living services is that it's not one time limited. Like the VR program tries to move people, give them all the skills they need, and then give them a really good background so that they could continue to not depend on the rehab services and to move forward and so forth. But with the older population, that your circumstances, your not only the environment, but your physical condition change and vision changes. And that means a new adaptation to, your new condition, so forth. So I love the fact that people can, reapply if their circumstances changes. I know that now the Lighthouse is fully staffed and they're beginning to deal with waiting lists, and hopefully they will expand and so forth. So I guess if I have to pinpoint somewhere that needs, more work, is that independent living program where, people who are not working have place to go to get services.
Right. I don't think you're the only one that would express that sentiment. I've heard that multiple places, that is definitely an underserved population. So I'm glad that you are putting words to that thought. Okay. Yeah. So Naomi, I would like to know, what is the one thing that you feel is the most important thing you learned from your mom?
Wow. Let's see. There's so many things that I learned from her, including playing the piano and how to cook, lasagna and things like that. But I would say she really helped me realize that, having a disability, being blind, it's not something that you can still live a full, rich, independent life, be successful, in your home life as a mother, as a parent, as a daughter, but also in your professional life and your career. So, she really inspired me to, work in this field, because I saw from her example that with the right skills and training and attitude, you can really achieve anything that anyone who is fully sighted is capable of, or more.
Yes. And then on the reverse side of that, what would be the biggest thing you want to pass down to Ren?
I would say, the same thing, that you wouldn't judge someone based on any difference, in the way that they would do things. I remember growing up as a child, and even still, going places with my mom, it's like people, stare. It's, whoa, someone blind, and
yeah,
people are very well-meaning, and I would say now way more educated about, disabilities in general and that sort of thing. But, back in the day growing up, going to the makeup counter with her, it was the women behind the counter would not address her directly. They would address me and ask me what she wanted. And I just thought that was so rude.
Yeah. And that still happens a lot.
I'm sure. Yeah. I see it happen still. And I think, so for Ren, I want him to understand that having a disability is just a difference, and it doesn't mean that you should treat anybody any differently.
Thank you. So, Keiko, that is a huge career path that you just gave a whole dissertation on. Wow. So my question is, what was your inspiration for the beginning of all that? What was the part that made you say, this is what I really want to do?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because I was kind of reflecting back, my experiences as early as what I could remember. But I think the most significant, I've had visual changes as I went through in early elementary school. I noticed that, like, I couldn't read the textbooks. I could see people at a distance. I couldn't, my eyes wouldn't adjust to quick movements. So those kinds of things led to a lot of reluctance to participate in physical activities and so forth that required quick response. And then by the time I got to the point that I was not able to see in third grade or fourth grade to read the books, then, I kind of developed more of, honed in my memory skills, and I listened really well and try to fake all that stuff. We came to the United States in, end of 59. So I was 11 in the fifth grade. And initially we started, regular school, and my cousin was in it. So he was an interpreter in my class and so forth. But eventually they found out that I really didn't see very much of anything. So they got me an itinerant teacher who recommended that, I really need to learn some blindness skills, not large print, and because, reading first letters of a word and the tails and the long T's and so forth, and I couldn't see the little letters, especially things like eyes and, something that's flatter,
Right.
So they got me to learn Braille, I think second semester in seventh grade. Unfortunately, though, I was really excited to learn it, and I learned pretty quickly. But my English skills weren't all that great. So I was struggling not just with Braille, but really identifying words and so forth and so on. I really, really focused a lot on academics, trying to improve English and to kind of succeed in school. So academics was my whole focus through high school and first 2 years of college. But backing up, I attended a blindness skills training rehabilitation center in Illinois, in Chicago. Summer, I think it was an 8-week program where we learned, cane skills under the sleep shades, and then some of the like sewing techniques, eating techniques, all that stuff you're supposed to learn, independent living skills. My mother was a very, very strong person who had high expectations. Her thing was, I don't want others to look at you because that you can't do this because you're blind,
Good for her.
She had expectation that I would perform age-appropriate things. So by the time I attended this training center, I had no issues with putting together simple meals for myself and, cleaning, laundry. I used to do the family laundry in the summertime, and then the dressing and so forth. So picking up my clothes, we used to put curls in our hair. Remember the rollers and things?
Yes.
Back in those days. But anyway, I did all that. But there were kids who attended who were same age as me, who I remember one morning this kid, was kind of crying because she couldn't find the buttons to put on the dress. Well, because she had to dress inside out, of course she couldn't button. So I thought, oh my goodness, this is really not good. Kids, by the time you get to be 13, 14, you should know when things are right side up, and then you should be able to dress yourself with that no problem. You should be able to take a shower and all those kinds
Absolutely.
of things. So anyway, so that's when I thought, oh, well, this is something I want to do. I think that was my first time that I started thinking that, oh, I want to be a teacher for the blind. As I say, I focus on academics so that I could really go to college. That was throughout my high school, that was my primary focus, is that I have good enough grades to be able to go to college.
Well,
So,
I also really like the fact that you brought up the thought of not only learning to function as a blind person and learning Braille, but the whole language barrier as well. I mean, that's a lot of things in one fell swoop. A lot of people wouldn't even think about the second language part on top of it. That's huge.
I remember back in when I first came to the United States, the first summer, everybody thought, not realizing how little vision I had, they signed me up for a YMCA summer program. So, you did a lot of play and arts and stuff like that. I could see things close hand, but my biggest concern was that I keep up with the rest of the kids, as they change one activity to another and stay with it. And I didn't know any of those kids. And my frustration wanting to tell them that I really can't see and I need your help. So I remember writing, the edge of the newspaper that I think we were in a craft class. And so you had a newspaper spread all over the table. And on the edge of it, I said, I can't see. Those are the things that I learned, right, in class. And I think it was by the time I got to that, the YMCA program was, I think I was been here 6 months. And I, learned few words and that's whatever. And then somebody read that, and I think finally convinced that, I can see, and somebody, walked in front so I could see to follow. So I mean, I survived that summer, but that was the most frustrating thing. And then people didn't really understand the vision level of, or lack of vision that I had until you have key words, and it's very difficult to explain. My mother didn't speak a word of English, and she was already working, and my dad was working, so they couldn't really take. So I mean, I was pretty much on my own. Plus, my cousin, he tried to explain things, but he had only been here in the United States 3 years before I was, so he wasn't all that great about the details,
Sure.
So, I think it's a double handicap, I guess. Vision, lack of vision, but also not being able to express the amount of visual issues that I had, and communicating that to the teachers and so forth. But people were really, really kind. The teachers were kind, and kids, because I was kind of different and novelty, So
Mm-hmm.
and the teacher asked them to be nice and show me around. She can't see well, and so forth and so on. So, they were really one of the female students. She became my friend, but she'd kind of hold my hand and take me places. And those schools are dark inside, in the hallways, old brick
Yeah.
buildings.
Yeah.
So I used to follow that white line on the edges to know where I was going. By the time I got to be in high school, then I began to feel comfortable with my English and to be able to communicate. And one good thing about having gone to school in Japan was, that math is the same, right? You add, subtract, and divide, and whatever, all of that stuff. And at the time, Japan, I had finished 2 semesters or 2 trimesters, and their math was much more advanced. I was already doing some basic algebra, with x's and y's and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and solving those problems, like the train comes at a certain speed, from one direction, how long would they, kind of, where would they meet, or I don't know, something like that, so that it involved X, Y.
Yes.
So, I came to the United States and we were doing additions, subtractions, and like 3-column additions and subtraction. That was nothing,
Yeah. So you at least had an advantage there.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I mean, there was something that I could always say.
Yeah.
That, I did well.
Well, is there anything like now that you want to do in your retirement, just like bucket list, or, what are your goals and enjoyment factors? And I hear that, you taught Naomi to play the piano. So I'm assuming that you play the piano as well.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did try learning Braille music, but, it's slow. And then getting Braille music, I guess it's more, I don't know how much is available. And I always learned Braille. I mean, I've always learned music by ear. So
Mhm.
my teacher would record, sections at a time, hands separate. Don't have a good enough ear to be able to hear and then duplicate. I don't have that kind of talent. So it's
Mhm.
always been a labor-intensive process to master a piece. So I mean, I do some, stuff, learn pieces for church. I don't do that anymore, but I used to be able to fill in if they needed somebody to do the
Mhm.
accompaniment. So music is, I get enjoyment through listening to kids play. And our grandson, one of my grandson is learning piano, and so I go and sit and listen to it, and then I kind of try to imitate his stuff that I could still do.
Yeah.
So music, in terms of other enjoyment, I download books from the Bard a lot. That's my go-to for the book thing. I like to cook, so I do. Now with the COVID stuff, I've been cooking 3 meals, 7 days a week. Once in a while, we go out or take in, bring in stuff, and I do contribute to like family food, stuff like that. We do a lot of walking for leisure, and I would love to. One of my goals is to travel to Europe, because that was my dream, to be able to do at least one of that. We went to Japan several times, and I like to experience European culture. I love, the classical music because of my piano and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I think castles, and some of that
Yes.
kind of experience that you don't have in the United States.
Right. I'll go with
and
you.
Then, oh, good. Yeah. I'm trying to talk my husband into it. But yeah, and the other things that I, started doing volunteer work. I was volunteer at Site Connection, as I said, but I started teaching Braille there and developed an introduction to Braille curriculum where we just spend a couple hours and introducing people. And I always felt that like people make decisions about learning or not learning Braille based on what they hear without really, getting into it. If you can't see well, and if you just touch Braille, whatever, just for a second or two, how would you know, what you're able to do? And so we started this intro program where we could just introduce the alphabet, how it's made, and have them get a chance to feel what Braille is. And we do it in a group so that they read together or a line at a time, so that people don't have to feel embarrassed that if they can't figure that out, because they have others in the class figuring that out. So we try to make it really fun, and it's just an exploration process. We did start this beginning class where we taught Braille alphabet and basic punctuation. I started doing that at the library before COVID started, and we did a couple of intro classes, and then I'm hoping that we'll be able to go back and resume
that would be great.
And then to be able to do at least, if we could teach UEB and contracted Braille, teach them a number. Now that they have that ZoomX, and hopefully when it gets into beyond the demo project stage, and people are able to get equipment that works and dependable, reliable, and stuff like that, hopefully more people will be able to use it, because I really think that older people who may have some tactile limitation be able to feel the Braille dots, because you could, increase the intensity, the Braille dots, and you could control the speed and how you want to read that stuff. And you only see one line at a time, so you're not going to have confusion between lines and so forth. So I think it is a great, great tool, device, and hopefully that will be able to help people who may have hearing issues, because you get older, you don't hear things well. Also, people, who can't really, large print is really inefficient. You could only make your screen larger so much, and then you're reading letter by letter. So you might as well read Braille and learn to do that. And so, and then beyond just labeling personal things, I think it would be a good tool for people to access, like email, to be able to read it, to be able to, get their contact list and get their phone numbers, all that stuff. I know iPhone does all that stuff, but and then you could hook it up with ZoomX as well.
Yeah, so I'm curious about Naomi's thoughts on this technology.
Well, I love technology. I remember hauling the 24-inch, 50-pound CRT monitors up apartment stairs that, where there's no elevator, and thank goodness that things are improving. I really am a fan of products that are made based on, universal design principles. We talk about it a lot for homes and buildings and with the ADA. But I think using those concepts and applying them to technology in general that anyone can access is kind of hopefully the path forward. The specialized technology, like Braille displays and note takers and CCTVs or video magnifiers are, have a place, and they're very important, but they're so expensive. And I think having some mainstream technology that is accessible to lots of people is kind of the path forward, or at least, it makes access easier. And then on the flip side of it, I think more and more businesses and organizations and, government agencies understand how important it is for their digital content, whether it's software or, forms or PDFs or websites, all of that, social media, having that be accessible to begin with, I think is kind of how we sort of close the gap in terms of accessibility.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of progress has been made, but there's still a long way to go with all of that. Websites, everything.
Yes, it's But I think, more and more, things are moving forward. And I think that, up to some studies say up to 30% of social media users will self-identify as having a disability, which is a huge population, right?
Yeah.
These companies realize, oh, that's a huge number of people we can sell our products to, right? If it's accessible. And so I think that there is more understanding of the population and that there is an incentive to make products and websites and content accessible. So
and I think, like you said, if it starts becoming more of the incorporated into the beginning of the process, rather than having to go back and fix it, is becoming more of an awareness thing.
Yes, having worked in VR and going to job sites and looking at accessibility with database or specialized software that they're supposed to access at the job. I mean, going back and trying to make things accessible after they've already been developed and they're not it's just kind of this impossible task. It feels like you're running on a treadmill. You're not really going, you're just trying to keep up and manage that. And so, I think, if you're using federal funding now, you are required to look at accessibility at the procurement stage.
Right.
Yeah, hopefully. And hopefully we'll see that, maybe in the next 10, 20 years. We'll see.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys both the last question that I always ask my interviewees. And I'm going to start with Naomi, and then we'll have Keiko end. Is what would be the one thing that you would want to pass on to the world? If you had one thing to say, what would that be?
Okay, give me a second to think about
Yep.
it. I don't know. I think that looking at the world with an inclusive view is kind of what I would encourage people to do. And I know we talk about that in terms of race and diversity. And I feel like there's more discussion of that in terms of disability too. But I think it's being inclusive about how you interact and include others, but also it's thinking inclusively when you're designing products, when you're just thinking about putting anything out there in the world. I think there's a lot of division in our country and, clearly in the world right now. And I just like people to think about, trying to be more inclusive in every aspect of their lives.
Yes. And Keiko, what about you?
Wow. See, that's a huge question.
Right.
Why do I want to pass it on to the world?
Welcome to my interviews.
Yes. The thing that I wanted to impart to upcoming generations, particularly younger people who are blind or have any kind of disability, that I really think you have to really dream. Because once you dream about something, and if you stay focused on it, things will begin to fall in place. And I think I really read somewhere successful people start with a dream. And if you make it more, dream become more of a reality, and you begin to think on it, and then you establish your goals, and then the options come before you, and you will know which direction to go, and that you follow because you have a goal set in my mind. You have your dreams, and eventually things will work out. You might have to fail a few times, but through that you will know what is the right direction to achieve. And I think that was my whole driving thing with the OTC, and I had a vision for what I wanted to be. And we took several, steps that involved assessment and getting feedback and kind of regrouping and getting partners. So all of these kinds of things will fall in place if you know what you want to achieve. So I guess it's to dream and to really move towards it, and don't be afraid of failing, because through that failure, then you will learn and to grow and become stronger and so forth. Of course, you can't be just stubborn and refuse to listen to people because that's not really understanding, listening, and to reassessing your path. So, and the other thing that I wanted to say about being a parent, because I'm not sure that if I was as successful, I appreciate Naomi's comments about that I was, I provided some inspiration, support. So, but I think being a parent is a lifelong experiment, and you do and be the best you can at the time, because you really can't do more than what you can at the time, as long as you do the best that you have to offer. And then, learn from your mistakes, and just like I said before, and then adapt and grow with your children, and to be a good role model, that you want to role model the behavior that you want your children to follow. And we don't always succeed because sometimes we forget to listen, but hopefully your true intent and your, kind of desire for your children to succeed is, comes through, and that they choose. I think for me, you didn't ask for this, and I don't know if Naomi, but Naomi was a very, very active, very curious child. And as a blind person, that was very challenging, because she wanted she was quick and into a lot of things, and for me to catch up and keep up with her was a huge, particularly when she was young and didn't know what was dangerous and so forth. Huge risk taker, and technology probably is a very good thing that she landed on. But despite all of that, I think we all kind of survived, and and I really, really do appreciate the people that they've become and the parents that my daughters have become.
Do you feel like you are a risk taker as well?
Well, I think I'm not sure that I was a risk taker per se. I think my husband probably is more of a risk taker than I am. But I mean, I was, because of my blindness, the changes that we made in our life, like coming to the United States and having to learn English, and I was put in situations where I had to take some risk. But it's not something that I went, and looked for, to get myself into those. But I faced them, and I'm a very steady, fairly calm person who, looks at situations and kind of plan for steps to
yes,
problem solve, get out of that kind of things. And those are my strengths. And as a blind person, you don't always do things spontaneously. You have to think about it. You have to plan for it if you want a successful outcome. Even, things like starting with traveling and stuff, right?
Yes.
You have to know the bus routes, and you just can't. And then even walking, you want to have a destination, so you'll wind up there. Or even if you're just taking a walk, you have to know where you're going, and so you could retrace your steps. You can't just look across the field and say, "Oh, that's where I want to go," and then you have the goal. So
yeah,
I've always been a planful person, and I think that's probably helped me to succeed in getting to where I wanted to go. I think, the life experiences gives you the opportunity to become stronger as you encounter different challenges, and, being independent, living on your own, and so forth and so on. It really adds to your future outcome.
So I know that I mentioned that the theme of this particular issue is audacity. And originally you said you didn't really know if you were an audacious person, but I hear from what you're saying that you kind of have a quiet boldness to you, that you stick to it and you just keep steady and you go and you get things done. And that is, to me, what audacity is. And it shows its forms differently with different people. But I see both of you as very audacious women. And I really appreciate you both taking the time to, talk with me and get your messages out and share your lives.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is fun.
Yeah.
I've never done anything like this together, so
I think it's pretty neat.
I feel like I learned some stuff about my mom.
Right?
I haven't heard before, so yeah, very cool.
This podcast was made in association with Washington Council of the Blind's Newsline publication. You can contact us at the wcbnewsline@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
Credit for this production goes to podcast producer Zach Kurtz, editors Heather Meares and Reginald George, and we'd like to extend a thank you to Kevin McLeod at Incompetech.com for his use of the song Life of Riley. Thank you so much for listening, and tune in for our next episode or check out previous episodes.